How did you feel when you experienced the civil rights movement?
I felt that a new change was coming to Birmingham and that our lives would be forever changed.
Yeah, I too felt that. There was some excitement in the air for me as I looked forward to what was getting ready to happen. It was beginning to be a high time in this city for black people because we were coming together to fight something that was very negative to us as a people.
What was your reaction during the civil rights movement?
There were mixed feelings, some excitement and some fear, not knowing what to expect.
Also, there was some fear among the black community because having been segregated and with Jim Crow so long and how we were being treated, there was fear among a lot of our people. I think the younger generation, however, were very excited and anticipated going forward with this. There were some of our people who sort of didn't really want to come out and show their feelings because of they had jobs they were hoping that they wouldn't lose, and there was a lot of fear, and that was the reason for it. And but there was still a lot of excitement.
Your friends and family directly affected during the civil rights movement.
And when you say how were we affected, I did have friends and family affected. Myself, I was working at the U.S. Postal Service downtown, and of course it was segregated. We had our own water fountains and restrooms, and that was in the federal government. In 1960, or in the 60s especially, I went there in 1957, so this was new to my co-workers and all. We worked together side by side, black and white, but when it came to going to restrooms and lunch rooms and so forth, we went our separate ways. They had a little small lunch room for blacks and a real large restroom for the whites. But that was something that wasn't new to us. And young people today couldn't understand that because they had never been a part of that. That's all we ever knew. So we accepted because we had to. It was the law in the land, law of the land here in this state, in all the southern states especially. But I was working and I had a job and I had to take a test and pass it and get a job there. But anyway, I had friends who were affected who did march. I had nephews going to high school who were arrested when the students came out of schools, and they started putting them all in the jail. They didn't have a place to put all the students. They used the fairground. They used the Alabama fairgrounds for the students because the jails couldn't hold the students. So they just took them in school buses and put them out in the fairgrounds. And all of the schools, the students just left the schools. And that's one of the biggest things that happened with this youth and a lot of our family and a lot of our friends. I knew friends who also did get arrested for marching and so forth. It's a long story, and I don't know whether we have enough time to really explain so much that went on, but that's just a part of it.
Was your education directly affected by the segregation?
My education was greatly affected by the segregation because I lived in a neighborhood where there were white schools for white children, and there were none. Well, it was a school for blacks in my neighborhood from grades 1 to 4. Excuse me, after we finished the 4th grade, I had to come all the way across town from East Birmingham over to Smithfield to go to Lincoln Elementary School. So therefore we had to ride the city bus to town, change buses, and ride to Smithfield every day. So I was greatly affected, and in the process we were passing white schools that was basically for white children, or mainly for white children. We passed those in order to get to a black school, and that affected us very, very much so. And not only that, did we have schools that were inferior, we had books that they had used And the books came down to the black schools after the white children had used them. And so we never got new books. We always had used books that came from other schools. So that affected us, and integration did a lot for us.
Adding to that, my wife just said, we also had, in my case, I lived about 2 blocks from Ensley High, but I had to go to Parker, which we had 3 buses coming to Ensley just for students. And we had to ride there and ride back. But the main thing is that we got our books from Phillips High School, which was all white. And our school books, we would get our books and look at them, and kids had written in those books. Pages were torn, some pages were torn out, but those were the books we had to study out of. And these were things that happened during the Civil Rights Movement that was very, very bad for our educational circumstances.
Did you personally experience any hatred?
Yes, being black, we experienced hatred. As young black kids coming from Lincoln Elementary and Park High School, many times we would walk to town from there and save our transfer fare to buy snacks in town. And one particular time, about 4 or 5 girls, we went in one of the 5 intensive stores to buy some peanuts. And of course the sales clerk, she waited on all the white people who were in the store and just looked at us as if, what y'all little nigger girls want, what they thought of us. And we just stood there and patiently waited until she finished the white people. Then she said, what y'all want? And so we said, one of the girls with us, she says, I want $1 worth of these peanuts, $1 worth of these, 50 cents worth of this candy, and 50 cents worth of that. And when she dished it all up, she said, now you eat it. And we all walked out and laughed.
Oh yeah, had that situation happened to 7 or 8 black boys, it wouldn't have happened like that. They were a little more lenient with females than they were with black boys. They would have, my mother probably wouldn't have known what I looked like when I got home that day. Anyway, that's the way it was. A policeman would have taken us somewhere and took them out, beat us down like animals.
How did the segregation laws affect you mentally?
Well, we were, like I said, I was during this time, incidentally, I said earlier, I was working. There were a lot of people. One thing I said about this, you all have heard about the dogs and the firemen and all that. You've seen pictures of that. I used to get off from work at the post office and get in my car and come home. I lived Winona, and I'd come right down through town, and I would see all of that happening. But there were people who lived in out of state, and say New York and Chicago, and so who were reading that in their cities, and they thought that the average person couldn't walk the street. It actually wasn't like that. I mean, it was the people who were demonstrating. The kids loved it. They got out of school, they went downtown, they got knocked down by fire hoses, and they got up and danced in the water, and dogs, they would put dogs, they didn't know what to do. But that's what saved us. The Civil Rights Movement was saved by the youth because their parents couldn't do this. A lot of their parents they wouldn't have jobs, they couldn't take care of their families, they'd be fired just like that, but they couldn't do nothing with the students. So as a result of that, that was a mental situation that we had. I wasn't affected by it as long as I just went on home and went back to work and what have you. And we weren't bothered by the white establishment as such.
Well, it did affect us mentally. Even when we were younger children and we knew nothing but segregation, it made you feel like you were inferior to other people. And it wasn't until integration that we realized we was just as important and just as good as anyone else when things began to change and we began to receive more in the way of education.
Cautious about starting a family during the Civil Rights Movement?
No, I don't think we thought about it in that sense. About starting a family or what have you. Like I say, when the marches and all came along, they were, what year? 60,
In the 60s.
in the early 60s. And some things had started to change and gradually, we couldn't shop in the store. I mean, we would shop in the stores, but we were treated as secondary or third class citizens, so to speak, or fourth class, so to speak. But things.
I would say that we were really cautious at that time because the neighborhood where we lived was not near where the marching and the fighting and all of the everything that was going on. We lived in a neighborhood out of town, out of the general area of town, so it wasn't affecting us in that way that it made us cautious about our family or afraid of our family situation.
How did you survive during the Civil Rights Movement?
Well, evidently we survived it. We are still here, and we didn't get bombed out. And like my wife said, we lived out on the outskirts of town and had our own community, all black community. And within the things that were really happening were mostly downtown and among the leaders who, like a lot of churches were bombed. These churches were close to the city, more or less, and the leaders who, like Shuttlesworth and Martin Luther King, those are the people who were really targeted because they were the leaders, and if they thought that they could get the leaders and get them out of commission, they would win. But all this news about the fire hoses and the dogs, and when the news got a hold to that around the world, this is what helped the Civil Rights Movement more than anything. It was when the kids left school, all the schools just turned out and they started marching, and because their parents really couldn't do it. Their parents had to work to make a living, and they were being fired. A lot of them were still fired. But this was what really helped the Civil Rights Movement, our students.
What are your thoughts today, looking back on the Civil Rights Movement?
Okay, looking back on the Civil Rights Movement and things that happened, I feel that God was in the plan of everything, and that as long as we kept close to Him and prayed and kept our minds on Him and doing the things that were pleasing in His sight, that He took care of us. He took care of even those who were hosed down and bitten by dogs. God took care of them, and He took care of the situation. And so I look back on it as a time in history of something that had to happen for the betterment of the whole world.
And of course, we still have a long way to go. And I think even our young people of today realize that there's still improvement to be made. Racial equality is not perfect. Those are the things that we have to work on as citizens, and we're just thankful that things are as well as they are. And as we move forward, we hope that those things will be worked out one day.